All right. Good evening, once again, visionary leaders, nation shapers, and purpose driven pioneers. It is my honor and joy to welcome you to yet another unforgettable evening in the Unfolding Capacity Virtual Leadership Masterclass series. Whether you've been journeying with us from the beginning or you're joining us for the very first time tonight, we welcome you with open arms and deep gratitude. A heartfelt thank you to all our consistent participants, those who return each week with hunger and humility to grow. We also like to salute every one of you who have taken the time to invite others into this space. You are multiplying transformation. And to all our first time guests tonight, we say, welcome home. You belong in this room. At Unfolding Capacity, our mission is bold yet simple. It's to unlock, to grow, and sustain capacity in people and institutions. We serve individuals, schools, businesses, organizations, and churches through strategic consulting, leadership consulting, capacity building workshops, and transformational mentoring experiences. Our goal? To raise leaders who are both excellent in execution and anchored in purpose. Leaders just like you. And tonight's masterclass is nothing short of divine appointment. We are honored to host a man who is not only esteemed by many for his wisdom and leadership, but one who has personally ignited a fire in me, a hunger for personal growth, leadership excellence, and living purposefully beyond limits. He is a leader who leads with humility, with power, and unwavering conviction. Please help me to welcome Reverend Sakhiwo Rala. Sakhiwo is a devoted husband and a proud father of three, a man who sees his first and greatest ministry in the way he leads his family with faith, integrity, and vision. He is currently the lead pastor of Good News Community Church, a vibrant and growing multi-site congregation based in Cape Town, where he provides spiritual oversight and discipleship to leaders and members across three branches. He is also the founder of Good News Communversity, a groundbreaking leadership and ministry training institute that is shaping believers to have both biblical foundation and real world impact. Beyond ministry, Sakhiwo is seasoned in the business world, having served as managing director of Monarch Investment Group, a major Old Mutual franchise from 2017 to 2024. His background in finance, strategic leadership, and organizational development continues to influence the way he builds, empowers, and leads. Tonight's theme, ladies and gentlemen, is both timely and urgent: leading beyond limits, empowering leaders to grow, perform, and think beyond and big for national and continental transformation in a rapidly changing world. In a time when the world is shifting fast and pressure mounts from all directions, we need leaders who don't just survive the change, but shape the future. We desperately need leaders who are driven by vision, anchored in purpose, and built for impact at every level. That is family, organization, nation, and continent. That's what tonight is all about. That's what you are about. So please lean in, be fully present, and let your voice be part of the journey. Use our chat room freely, share your insights, drop your questions, and connect with fellow leaders. This space is for all of us. Let the fire of bold leadership be rekindled tonight. Welcome once again to the Unfolding Capacity Virtual Leadership Masterclass. Let us grow, let us think bigger, let us lead beyond limits, and do it all together. Sir Sakhiwo Rala, please take over and give us your very best tonight. Over to you, sir.
Whoa, I couldn't believe that was referring to me, but thank you so much, Doc. Thank you for having me, and greetings to all the leaders that are on the platform. It's truly a great honor and privilege for me to be sharing some thoughts with you. And I really, really hope that I will be able to serve you well. Mine is very practical and um, very, to the point. I'm not an academic. I've been serving in the trenches since 2003. I've been pastoring in a township context, um, bearing some scars of serving in that context, the challenges, but the lessons, the joys, and the fulfillment that comes from it. With today's topic, leading beyond limits, empowering leaders to grow, perform, and think for national and continental transformation in a rapidly changing world. I must say it's a loaded topic. We're not going to be able to do justice to it in 45 minutes. However, I'm going to do my best to lean in on certain aspects of the topic that I feel are very important and very urgent. Now, you heard that I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm also a pastor. That is my main work, pastoring. And my thinking is majorly influenced and shaped, by the work I do, by my faith. And if you hear a lot of that coming out, bear with me, I'm not sermonizing, but that's how my worldview is shaped. However, I truly believe that what I have to share with us today will be able to contribute, albeit, in a small way, but it will be able to contribute in our journey of leadership. I really want to start by saying that my leadership is inspired a lot by, one I believe to be the greatest leader that ever walked the earth, none other than the son of Mary and Joseph, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And I just want to paint a picture that will help us understand where I come from. And as I said, I'm not in any way going to sermonize, but this is my major influence, and I really want to start from there. There was a moment when he had an opportunity to have a meal with his disciples. And as they were sitting on the table, he was teaching them on leadership. He told them that the leaders of this world, they lord it over their subjects. And he challenged them. He said to them, but not so with you. Whomsoever wants to be great amongst you must be the servant of them all. And I suspect that the most famous definition of leadership by John Maxwell comes from that statement, that instruction that Jesus gave to his disciples, that it shall not be so with them, but whoever wants to be great amongst them must be the servant of them all. John Maxwell defines leadership as influence. That's it. Leadership is influence. In my context, I have extended that definition a bit. We define it as leadership is serving, rather is influencing through serving. Leadership is influencing through service. So ours is to equip, empower, lead, help others to shine. I believe that's what leaders do. I don't believe that a leader should be focusing on being the biggest winner in the team. Rather, the team should be the biggest winner. The team, not the leader, should be the biggest winner. Let me move forward, and then it's going to come together. Now, we're looking at transformational leadership in the context of South Africa, our nation, and the continent. I believe that, and if you look at this slide, this is the core of my talk today. This is the most important slide I will share with us today. The 3 requirements for transformational leadership. knowledge, character, and environment. Leaders must go a little further. Leaders must be knowledgeable. John Maxwell talks about the levels of leadership, and the lowest being leadership by title or leadership by position. Leaders should be exemplary, should be inspirational. Leaders should be knowledgeable. Now, there are 5 levels to the content of the mind: data, information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Leaders should be knowledgeable. So when we talk about knowledge in this context, we talk about those 5 levels of the content of the mind. However, knowledge without character is a disaster waiting to happen. We need knowledgeable people that have character. If you like, you can talk about ethics. You can talk about righteousness. But leaders must be people of character. Leaders must be beyond reproach. I think in our country, we see, especially in the last few days, we have seen how people that have ascended to high positions, of influence and authority and power for that matter, have been found wanting because of lack of character. Because your knowledge, your education, your skill will take you to heights. Sometimes, if your character does not match, that will not be able to sustain. Thus, it's important that as we grow in knowledge, we must also grow in character. We don't only need knowledgeable leaders, we need ethical leaders. We need leaders with scruples, okay? But also environment. Now, in my own estimate, and this thought has been really influenced by a gentleman called Sunday Adalaja. In my own estimate and observation, I have observed that environment counts for more than knowledge and character put together. By that, I mean a knowledgeable person with a good character in a bad environment has more chances of failing than succeeding. Thus, as leaders, our biggest responsibility is creating an environment where the people we lived thrive. Our biggest work is creating an environment where our teams thrive. But not only our teams, even the places where we serve in our context, because we and our teams are serving a context, are serving in a context. We want to create an environment where our team thrives, but also we transform the communities, the spaces in which we serve. So if our organizations, if our families, if our communities are going to thrive, we have to work on the environment. This is true for marriage. This is true for family. This is true for business. Environment counts. When we talk about environment, we talk about culture, okay? A renowned leader referred to as the father of management speaks about environment this way. He says, culture will eat strategy for breakfast any day. That's Peter Drucker. He says, culture will eat strategy for breakfast any day. So you can have the best strategies, you can have the best plans, but if you have bad culture, the bad culture will sabotage the strategy, will sabotage the plans. Let me move forward. We're going to come back to this. So for the majority of our time, we're going to look at a case study. We're going to look at these 3 leaders and their countries. And I'm going to highlight what I've said in the previous slide, using this case study. And Doc, I will ask you to time me. Maybe when I'm 10 minutes, I have 10 minutes remaining, send me a message just for me to make sure that I don't go beyond time. I don't have a timer in front of me now. So let us look at these three leaders. I'm not sure if you can recognize them. Um, on my left, we have the late Robert Mugabe, former president of Zimbabwe. In the middle, we have Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father of Singapore. And on the right, we have Kwame Nkrumah, also the founding president of Ghana. Now, I want us to look at these three leaders, and I want us to look at the impact of their leadership and how things look now. Because you see, the power of leadership is what remains when you are gone. The late Dr. Miles Monroe put it this way: leadership without succession, or rather success without succession, is failure in disguise. Success without succession is failure in disguise. It's not just what we build, but the question is, will it remain when we are gone? Many leaders, they build things that fall on the next generation because what they are building is not standing the test of time. Some leaders, whatever it is that they are building, actually dies whilst they are still alive. We want to be the kind of leaders that when we are long gone, what we have built is still relevant and will remain strong. As I said in my introduction, my biggest influence is Jesus Christ of Nazareth. This is a leader that in his day never had a cell phone, never had an internet, never flew a plane, but he changed the world, not only in his lifetime. Until tomorrow, he is influencing the world. How did he do it? He raised leaders. What were the caliber of his leaders? He took ignorant, uneducated men in the main and trained them and equipped them. And those men changed the world in their lifetime. Why? Because the secret of leadership is not a strong general surrounded by pygmies, but is a strong general surrounded by strong lieutenants. Great leaders produce great leaders. The product of a leader is a leader. The product of a leader is a leader. Let us continue. So if we look at these three leaders that we have referred to, the late President Robert Mugabe, Lee Kuan Yew, and Kwame Nkrumah, let's look at their academic backgrounds. Remember, we said knowledge, and then we said character, and we said environment are the requirements for transformational leadership. If we're going to see change, those three are very critical. Kwame Nkrumah, he studied at Lincoln University, USA. He had a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Sociology. He also studied in University of Pennsylvania. He got Masters in Education, Masters in Arts, Masters of Arts rather in Philosophy. Also took a course in Theology, Political Science, and Journalism. Lee Kuan Yew, he studied at Raffles Institute in Singapore. He was a top student. London School of Economics, he studied briefly. He went to the University of Cambridge. He got first-class honors in law. Let's go look at the late President Robert Mugabe, University of Fort Hare, South Africa. Bachelor of Arts in History and English. He completed 6 more degrees by correspondence whilst in prison. Bachelor of Administration, Bachelor of Education, Bachelor of Science in Economics, Bachelor of Law, Masters in Science in Economics, and Masters of Law. Now, if we looked at these three leaders on paper, Who is the most qualified? On paper, it is clear. Who would we predict if we lived, you know, in the 1950s, in the 1940s, and we saw this kind of profiles before us? Who would we say is the most likely candidate to succeed and transform their nation? Well, let's allow results to speak for themselves. So we're going to compare Ghana, Singapore, and Zimbabwe. We're going to look at leadership, governance, and national transformation. Why are we doing this comparison? All three gained independence in the 20th century. All three faced colonial legacy, poverty, and identity crisis. They took radically different paths, and this reveals the power of leadership, governance, and vision. Let's look at them, just an overview. Ghana under Kwame Nkrumah. Now, Kwame Nkrumah started as the prime minister, and then he went on to become the first president of Ghana. His reign was about 9 years, 1957 to 1966. Now, when we look at Ghana at the time of independence, Ghana was rich in natural resources, cocoa, gold, and they had Pan-African leadership. But post-independence, they were democratic, but the democracy was challenged. We look at Singapore. Singapore was a resource-poor country, no natural resource at all. It was divided, but it turned out to become a global powerhouse. Now, let me tell you the story of Singapore in probably 2-3 lines. Singapore, under the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew, turned from third world country to first world country in one generation, under one leadership, from third to first. And it took leadership, strong leadership, to transform that country. And we're going to look at the factors that contributed to that transformation. But in one generation, small country, no natural resource, poor, divided, but became a first world country. Zimbabwe got independence in 1980. Rich in agriculture, had, of course, endowed natural resources with natural resources. There were racial inequalities. Post-independence, it collapsed and it became a very unstable country. And this points to leadership. Now, let's look at leadership styles. Let's look at leadership styles. At independence, Ghana, under Kwame Nkrumah, he was a charismatic, ideological leader, but he was overthrown in 1966. Now, this is very important for us to understand. This is very important because what I've observed is that for many of us, we have used our education to win arguments instead of transforming our environments. We have used it for communication. We have used it for, debates, not for building. We have strong ideologies. We are good at politicking, I'm a pastor myself. We preach, we are critical. We can criticize the government. I remember one time, and as I said, my background again is pastoral work. At one time, I was reflecting on the government of our nation. And whilst I was thinking about it, the issues of corruption and stuff, a thought came to my mind. Whilst I'm critically, reflecting on the government, what have I done with my own money? Have I stewarded it well? Have I been a good steward myself? I put myself, sometimes in my mind, in my imagination, in the same position. If I'm tempted, now we're talking about, illegal tenders to the tune of 360 million rands. If I was put right in that position and there was an opportunity to have access to that kind of money, would my no be no? Would my no be no? Do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes as a leader? So you look at this leader, charismatic, ideologically sound, but he could not take the nation, to prosperity and success. And these are things that we need to look into. And at his introduction, Dr. Titus also spoke to this. He referred to execution. Sometimes we come up with good plans, with good strategies, but we are not able to implement. We have ideologies, we have ideas, but implementation is not coming forth. Let's look at Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew. He was visionary, he was disciplined, and he led the nation to prosperity. He was not as charismatic. He was not as colorful, but he led the nation to prosperity. Zimbabwe, the leader was revolutionary. Later, he became authoritarian. And this is not criticizing. If you look at Lee Kuan Yew, one of the criticism against him was that he was authoritarian. He was a dictator. So I'm not saying these things to be criticizing. I'm saying these things as statements of fact. His leadership in Zimbabwe led to a decline. So it also speaks to us as leaders. We need to be reflective of our own leadership styles. Maybe we are charismatic. Maybe we know how to do fancy footwork. We know how to mobilize people. We know how to stir the crowds. But are we transformational? Are we building? Are we executing? I believe that leadership should move things forward. Leadership should move things forward. Things must be built. Things must stand. There must be practical, real transformation on ground when there's leadership. Let's look at economic performance of these countries. Let's look at Ghana. Currently, this is as per 2024. GDP, Ghana per capita, $2,500 US. Singapore, $85,000 US. Zimbabwe, $1,200 US. Like I said, I chose these because they were right about the same period of time. Look at the gap. Look at the difference. And what is the difference? The difference is leadership. The difference is leadership. Let's look at the key exports. Ghana, cocoa and gold. Singapore, electronics and services. Zimbabwe, tobacco and minerals. Now, you can already see there. Ghana and Zimbabwe, we're talking about natural resources in their raw state, in their underdeveloped state. You look at, so they are primary producers. You look at Singapore, electronics, services. They don't have natural resources, but they are producers, tertiary producers, and they are exporting electronics and services. How did this happen? Leadership. Let's look at education and human capital. Ghana expanded access to education, though it remains uneven in quality. Singapore, world-class STEM focus. Science, technology, world-class focus. Zimbabwe, decline due to brain drain. Now, these affect on ground, and the difference is leadership. You see, here's the thing. As you saw in the picture, we show the comparative picture on the education. The leaders in Africa were not less educated. Instead, they were more educated. But like one person once said, he said that it seems like immediately they drop off the airport. Whatever they learned, just evaporates out of the leaders' minds. I'm tempted to say more than I've said. Let's look at governance and corruption. The corruption index is at 2024 estimate. Ghana, moderate, 43 over 100. Singapore, very low, 83 over 100. Zimbabwe, very high, 24 over 100. What is the difference? The rule of law is strongest in Singapore. Now, this boils down to leadership. Do you know what Lee Kuan Yew did? One of his prime ministers was actually, his key leaders, government leaders, was involved in corruption. Very influential, very top. He used him, for example, and he was very close to him. And not only did he dismiss him, he imprisoned him as an example to the entire nation that corruption will not be tolerated. So great leaders, we need ethical leaders. We need leaders that will insist on the rule of law. I'm sure even as I speak, you can reflect on the state of our own nation, of our own country, especially, with regards to the revelations, of the recent past, So let's look at infrastructure and public service. Ghana, urban growth, but unreliable electricity. Singapore, smart cities, efficient transport. Now, these are key. I mean, if you look at that, just the issue of efficient transport is so key to economic development of a nation. It's so key. You look at Zimbabwe, collapsing infrastructure. Now, these things are we're talking at a national level, but this is true at a personal, family, church, community, organizational, level. These principles are transferable and applicable. I pitch them at a national level, but we can, like I said, when I was critical of a national government, the question that was pointed at me is, what have you done with your own money? What have you done with your own money? Can you account for your own money? You are criticizing the government. What did you do with the last 10,000 rands you had? The last 50,000 rands you had? What did you do with it? Can you account for it? So the principles I'm sharing might be at a national level, but they are applicable at a personal, family, community, organizational level. You look at Zimbabwe, infrastructure collapsing. What is the difference? Leadership. Let's take some lessons from Singapore. Singapore had visionary leadership. Visionary leadership. Now, when we talk about vision, I know sometimes we complicate things, and I will not be talking about vision from a Harvard level, but I think all of us should at least have a dream for a desired future. We should have an idea of a desired future. Things, let me put it this way. We are here now. We want to get there tomorrow, and this is how we want to get there, from A to C by B. Our vision should be able to point to where we want to be in the near future, should be able to answer the question how we want to get there, from A to C by B. A vision with a time frame. What are we planning for the next 5 years? What are we planning for the next 10 years? I know that there are more, academic approaches to this, but I'm trying to keep it as simple and as practical as possible. Our organization is here today. This is where we'd love to be in the next 5 years, and this is how we plan to get there. Number two, Singapore had a rule of law and meritocracy. It was people were, rewarded according to merit. And this is so important. People should not feel that certain people, are chosen because of relations, because of any other thing except merit. Meritocracy is very important. Rule of law and meritocracy. Number three, discipline and planning. Discipline and planning. Leaders should never be lazy to plan. Leaders should never be lazy to plan. Number three, education and global outlook. In the case of Singapore, they sponsored their youth and took them, to America and Europe to study, and then they brought them back and appointed them as leaders in the Singaporean government and also, in Singaporean industry. So these are some of the things we can learn from Singapore. So let's look at Ghana and Zimbabwe. What went wrong? Over dependence on ideology and resources, weak institutions, corruption, and coups. It was a case with Kwame Nkrumah, and we also know how former President Mugabe also left office, and short-term thinking. And I want to refer also to a statement I made earlier that great leaders are not strong generals surrounded by pygmies. It's strong generals surrounded by strong lieutenants. We have seen leaders in the continent of Africa that are surrounded by yes sirs, people that are just there to blow, fans basically. They are fans, they are there to blow the whistle of the leader. They are not really challenging the leader. They are not calling the leader to account. And we have seen leaders that build their own, empires on the backs of people. They are perpetuating, the slavery model. I made reference to Jesus when he sat with his disciples on the table. Now, let me tell you the power of that. At the time, no leader as prominent as Jesus, sat with his disciples, with his followers on the table. The system was a feudal system. The servants, the peasants had their place, and the nobles had their place. So when Jesus sat with his disciples on the table, he actually went counterculture. That was a revolutionary move. And that's how he empowered his leaders. And that's how he challenged his leaders to do the same. And today, here am I, sitting somewhere in Cape Town, advocating and speaking, in a colorful way of a leader, of more than 2 centuries ago, rather 20 centuries ago, based in the Middle East, Israel. Why would I be mentioning him today? It's his leadership style. He had long-term thinking. His leadership was empowering. His leadership was transformational. So he did not have a short-term thinking. Even when he sent his disciples, he gave them a global vision. People with no internet, people with no aeroplanes, people with no, cell phones. He gave them a global vision. Why? He had a long-term, vision. And how do we turn things around? We need to go back to values-based leadership. We need to build strong institutions. We need future-orientated education. And we need discipline and strategic action. I want to really close it by saying that leadership is not just liberation, it's transformation. Those of us that are employers, it's not just helping people put food on the table, but we need to transform them. We need to contribute to their transformational journey. As Africans, we must rise with ethical, righteous leadership, especially for us as a nation in South Africa. There's never been a time when we needed that. Moral, ethical, not just educated, but leaders with good moral character. We need them now more than ever. We need them now more than ever. And I really want to close by really challenging us to rise and stand in the gap, wherever we are, and shine the light, and be those transformational leaders, and be the kind of leaders that will lift others, use the authority that we have to lift, to help others to become better. And I really think that is the blessing of leadership, is actually being a blessing to others. The blessing of leadership is actually using our authority, our influence, and our power to make others better. It should be said that since people met you and I, their lives changed for the better. Since we were appointed in the positions we occupy, people's lives changed for the better. It's not just about the bottom line, but it's also about the transformation of lives. Doc, I will pause here. That's really what I had to share. But maybe as a way of reminder, it's not just knowledge, it's also character, but most importantly, it's environment. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I feel like You pause at halftime. I really feel like you paused at halftime. I'm like, are you kidding me now? I just this is not sufficient. My goodness. My goodness. Oh man. I'm so much triggered. I'm so much triggered by a lot of things that you said. And wow. You said a statement that uh, the number of statements. One statement you said is that, look, success without succession is failure in disguise. And I think many of us who are here witnessed that, especially with the recent reminder of COVID. When most leaders, when most people passed away, and then institutions are left without leadership, and then you get to realize, wait, what are we doing? What have we been doing? How come we have no clue of what was happening before this happened? So that was a disruption. Then you spoke about, you said this statement, gosh, this touched me, that we use education, we have a tendency to use our education to win arguments and yet fail to transform our environment and communities. I think that's a big one. That's a big one. In your outline of the differences between or the educational background of these three leaders of these countries, how so much change happened with one that didn't seem to have the best education background in the countries that had similar backgrounds for that matter. It says a lot, especially because right here we have people who are learned, people who are studying, people who are studying further. And the temptation is to think, wait, is it that education is not valuable? Is that education is not significant? It does not determine what I become? Or is that maybe the way we educate is not transformational enough? You touched towards the end on the issue of that we need to have future, how can I say it, future linked of, yeah, education, where you train people in schools with a future in mind. And I'm just, yeah, I'm in awe. And I'd like to say thank you and give everyone that is here. If you've got any question or a comment, please feel free to just jot it down in the chat room or show by raising of hand. And then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask or to give a comment or to add from what Reverend has just shared with us. Yeah, but while people are preparing to write their questions and comments and also to raise them with their unmuted mics, I want to ask, because you spoke a lot of transformation, say, I want to ask, how do we then, as leaders, create this transformation culture? Create a culture that says, look, we cannot be institutions that keep the status quo, but institutions that actually continue to transform and consider transforming the world around us. And for those who are leading in churches, have these people who are we are producing, not fighting for ranks inside the building, but actually adding value and transforming the communities around them. You touched towards the end on that. Look, Zimbabwe and Ghana, and you spoke on the infrastructure failing. And funny enough, you go into these countries, you find that they're building mega churches. So, so the roads are broken, but the churches are massive, and therefore we start needing to ask, how do we then create the transformation culture amongst the people that we produce? How do we do that?
Wow, that is a big question, and I might not answer it entirely, but the first thought that comes to mind is we are very, huh, let me approach it this way. The first thought that comes to mind is that we are not human doings. We are not human havings. We are human beings. And this is why I'm answering this way. whilst we are acquiring and accumulating things, and that's how we measure success. We measure success based on our acquisitions, our accumulation. And whilst we are at that, the biggest thing that we neglect is always what we are becoming. And as a result, we have seen people sacrificing who they are for what they want to have. And that is very dangerous to a point, because you see, if we don't get this concept of human being and human doing, this is where the problem is. We will devalue human life. That's why we see people, and I'm taking the long route to answer your question because I think it's very important. This is why we see people willing to kill, to steal, to destroy in order to acquire and accumulate. Thus, the agenda becomes acquisition more than impact. Yet, when we are long gone, we will never be remembered for what we have acquired. Nobody cares to know what was your bank balance when you died. Rather, what difference you made. Let me give a practical example, and then I hope I'll be able to clean up my answer. Again, I will refer to the scriptures. Solomon. What made Solomon famous? It's not that he was a wealthy man. No. It's not that he had many possessions. No. It was actually a wisdom decision that he made when two ladies came to him claiming that, a child belonged to them. And he made a decision at that moment that made him famous permanently. What is my point? You will be remembered for your impact. All of us, when we are on our deathbeds, none of us will be thinking about their cars, their clothes, their bank balance. We'll be thinking about what we are leaving behind. So, why are we not transformational? It's because we are not transformed. That is the answer. It takes a transformed leader to effect transformation. And a transformed leader is a leader that knows that there's something beyond personal success. Generational impact is more important than personal success. The day we remember that will never be remembered for our comforts, but will be remembered for our impact, is the day we will be transformational. It's not the size of my church that will be remembered. It's the touch it had on individuals, on communities, on people. That is what will be remembered for. I hope I answered. I know I went to town and came back, but unless leaders are transformed, they cannot transform society. It's impossible.
Wow, that ending right there, that's the one. Unless leaders are transformed, they cannot transform society. This one leader here who have just said something. He said that once the team becomes the winner, the institution is bound to thrive. The institution is bound to thrive to its best, hence, therefore, it succeeds. I think that's very true, and is alluding to what you said earlier, that under great leadership, the team is the biggest winner. Now, I want to ask, right, as those who have questions are preparing themselves, uh, you spoke of that in Singapore, the leader had long-term thinking. His, his mindset was beyond himself, was beyond the time that he was in, the era that he was in. Now, my question is that how do we encourage long-term thinking and how do we begin to be long-term thinkers as leaders whilst we are clouded with the struggles of the present? And I can say, like, right here we have leaders of institutions. Some of them are caught up with trying to solve the problems of what's happening in their space, in their teams, within the performance of their school, of the circuit, of the church, of their business right now. Now they're like, okay, then I have to think long term. I have to think long term, but how do I do that? Well, I'm still having to manage what's happening right now. How do you do that?
Wow. The questions are big. And please, if there's people with better answers, I mean, please feel free to share your thoughts as well. But here's my thinking. I think that, like I said, I'm majorly influenced by the scriptures. So my thinking always, runs back to the scriptures. And so my thinking to answer your question on long-term thinking is that I think we think about things in a wrong way. And I know this is a very, generic and general statement. I'm grossly generalizing, but we're thinking about things in a wrong way. This is how we think. We plan a day, we plan a week, and then we plan a year. However, when I look at scriptures, it starts with purpose. In other words, it starts with the big picture. And then you narrow the big picture down to a day. As a result, according to the Bible, it should be easier to have a long-term plan than a short-term plan. Because once you discover your purpose should lead you now to planning and breaking it down to daily activities. Now, that's a whole teaching. Fortunately, I've actually developed a teaching on that, how to plan your life long term. But suffice to say for now, it starts with the big picture. Then you narrow it down to the details. What we want to do is that we want to start with a day. It's almost impossible to plan a day without the big picture that is the purpose. When I say almost impossible, I mean in terms of long-term effect. Let me give you another reference that will help us think about this. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus said something very scary. He said that those that hear my word and do it, I will liken them to a wise man. And if you look at that word wise, from the original text, the Greek, it means somebody who's pragmatic, practical, somebody who sees far. Okay, so a wise person is somebody who sees far. He says he builds his house on the rock. When the wind comes, when the storm comes, when the rain comes, what happens? It stands. But a person who hears and does not do is like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. When the wind comes, when the rain comes, when the storm comes, what happens? Great is its fall. Now, what does that mean? Whatever you are doing, you will face difficult seasons, you will have challenges, but wise people are people. The difference between a wise person and a foolish person, between a far-sighted leader and a short-sighted leader, is they execute according to purpose. They execute. What they do today is informed by the big picture. And I'm saying it starts with the big picture. It starts with the end. And this is how God himself functions. He sets the end before the beginning. So every leader should be able to have a big picture of that institution, that we want to be number one in the district. We want to be the leading whatever in the community. We want to be the exemplary this. And then from that big picture, you narrow it down to daily activities. Like I said, it's a whole teaching on itself, but I will pause here to answer you. I probably did not answer you, but I hope I've planted seeds in our minds.
Perfect. Gosh, perfect. Yeah, starting from the big picture, purpose. Anyway, Emmanuel has a question. Emmanuel Lugaga, please go ahead, and then I'll ask. There's a next question again by Nech as well. So, Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Thank you, our leaders. Mine is not a question. I just want to comment on, let me say, from the theme itself, from the topic, leading with limits, to some of the things that were cited here. Now, as soon as I look at the topic, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can.
Hello.
We can hear you say.
Yes, in fact, when I look at the topic, leading beyond limits, as soon as I saw that, I realized that as leaders, we are the ones mainly to be blamed by creating limits for ourselves. You gave an example of the Singapore leader, Lee, who didn't look at friendship when he disciplined his friend by even imprisoning him. Sometimes we fail as leaders because we are biased or we show favoritism. And once we do that, it means that we have failed because we are not going to promote the success of our school if we show favoritism to some of the people. You gave an example by trying to define leadership. The way you said it, I see leadership as servitude. If we look at what Jesus did, but I just want us leaders to that sometimes overlook where Jesus was washing the feet of his disciples, the feet of Judas Iscariot, whom he to betray him. By this, I just want to all of us that in our institutions, we also have some of the people who, based on their idea, based on their tendency, they become undesirable in the institution. But when we are leading, we must still show good leadership, even towards those people. Not to say that we are supposed to let them do whatever thing that they like, but I'm saying if we are helping people, we also help those ones who don't cooperate, those ones who don't like us, whether it is in public or secretly, we have to help them. When I talk about not being biased, I also think of what our premier said recently, the premier of Limpopo, Popera Matuba. She indicated that even if you are my friend, if you are not delivering, we will fight. She said, my friend is the one who wants me to look good. And as leaders, people we lead should make sure that the institution is good. The leaders are also good by doing what is right. Now, this means that we are supposed to focus on what should be done at the school. And if anything fails to do what should be done, if there is any action or we have to rebuke the person, this is what we are supposed to do. I was also listening when you were talking about long-term thinking. Then I looked at Simon Peter, the disciple of Jesus, who saw Jesus walking on the water. Then he asked Jesus, if you are the one, tell me to come to you walking also. Jesus said, no, you may come. People should note that Peter was really walking on the water up until he lost focus, because he was simply supposed to focus on Jesus, not on temporary disturbances. Now, this means that even in our leadership, we have the purpose, we want to achieve 1, 2, 3. But along the way towards our purpose, there will be some disturbances which we are not supposed to be distracted by. We are supposed to look at the bigger picture, where the purpose behind. I wanted to say thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that contribution, Mr. Emmanuel. You said a mouthful. You said a mouthful. And we really appreciate that contribution, especially when you spoke on how we have to learn to lead with a bigger picture while still leading with people that may disagree with us, but leading properly. I think that's a very important skill that you've said, that I've mentioned there. I really appreciate that. There's a question here, Sehala, and he says that it's from Nech. He says, how can we build something to outlive us?
Wow. Um, that's a good question. Let me say something first before I answer that question, and that is leadership in general is a very messy thing. When you are a leader, you're going to bear scars, you're going to burn your fingers, you're going to make mistakes. Um, you're going, your failures are going to be your your best university. I mean, I'm sitting here. I mean, there are people from our church here. We I'm not saying these things from a place where, I'm shining and all those things. I've made decisions that, at the end of the day, sure. I remember recently we bought a piece of land, we took our savings, we paid it cash, and we got to the community with the title deed. They chased us out. I mean, it was a huge loss. We grieved it. Seriously, we grieved it. I mean, we were really hurt and we were tempted, in many ways, but that did not deter us. So what I'm trying to say is that as leaders, I want us to understand that it's very messy. You're going to bear scars. You're going to face opposition. The world we live in. I mean, I was sharing this with our people that we live in a very funny world. This concept of democracy is quite interesting. You look at parliament. Our parliament has a group of people called opposition party, and they are paid. Can you imagine? All these people are claiming to build. Why isn't the parties that did not win, the parties that are not in government, why are they not called supporting parties? Why must they be an opposition party? Why must they oppose? Aren't they supposed to support? Aren't they supposed to help? Aren't they supposed to? Why are they opposed? I'm trying to show us that leadership in general, it's not a smooth thing. Um, that's why we need the character, because we're going to be challenged, we're going to be tested. Now, how do you build something that will outlive you? Systems. You have to live beyond self. You have to build something that will work even when you are not there. How do you do that? By systemizing things. Let me put it this way. If your organization is going to work, it must be such that it's not built around personalities, around certain people. The roles must be defined, and the people that come in must fit the roles. The people must align. You don't build around people. Even as yourself, as a point leader, as a primary leader, your role must be defined. Because when the role is defined, it means you can be replaced. It means so you can only do it by building systems. Um, Again, that's a topic on its own, but that's my short answer. That's my short answer. And I see on the comment section, there's another question on, is revolutionary leadership good for our education system? My answer to that would be, I don't think there's a good or bad leadership style. Leaders should be situational. We should apply situational leadership. There's a moment where you need to, show up as a certain type of leader. You can't be smiling 24/7, but also you can't, you can't be hard 24/7. There are moments where, as a leader, you need to be strong, you need to be hard. There are moments where, you need to be smiling and soft. So I would say it's not that one type of leadership is better than other, but certain occasions, certain situations will demand a certain type of style of leadership. That would be my answer. Back to you, Doc. I tried to couple them.
Yes, thank you so much. I think you placed it well, and just reminding us of what you said earlier, that thinking the bigger picture allows everything to fall into place. Then you know how you ought to behave at a particular time, not compromising on where you're going. But without clarity of where are we going as an institution, then you'll end up being caught up in trying to choose which leadership style is the best, at a particular time. So yes, thank you so much for bringing that clarity. Maybe as we end it off, I'm going to ask a very interesting question, right? You mentioned systems, you mentioned all of transformation. I want to ask a last question. This is just, you can just give from the top of your head. When you started, you gave an example of three nations, two African, one Asian. Today, we have Asian countries doing well. We've got Arab countries doing exceptionally well. We've got the West finding their space, trying to protect their territories, but doing well, you know. And one person said it and said, look, every one of these nations have plans for Africa, except Africans themselves, except African leaders. Every leader, when comes in any of these nations, they're asked, what plan do you have for Africa? Except for us Africans. And in your example of giving Ghana and Zimbabwe and Singapore, it seemed that the institutions that went wrong are African countries. Now, I know there are a lot of other countries that have also done things in the wrong way. But I want to ask, because it's always this time that when we look at ourselves as African leaders and people in Africa, that we wonder, is there something wrong with Africa? Is there something missing in Africa? And what is that special ingredient that could actually turn things around? We have hopeful leaders every now and then that come up. But what is it that could help us as we close it off?
Oh, that is a very big question. But I will point it to our worldview. I will point it to how we learn and how we think. And I have alluded to the fact that we use our knowledge for arguments, for criticizing, instead of building. Um, Unfortunately, we have embraced in the main the Greek culture in our approach to education, which is mainly cerebral. You know, we fill our minds with knowledge, but you know, that knowledge does not get to our heart. You know, somebody once said that the longest distance you will ever travel is the distance from your head to your heart. We have people that have studied accountancy whose personal books are not balancing. We have teachers who are teaching economics whose personal economy is not working. Why? Because we have a Greek approach to education. It's cerebral, but African culture is very close to Middle Eastern culture, and by extension, very close to biblical culture. And that is a culture of apprenticeship. If you go to Nigeria, there is a group of people referred to as the Igbo people. They are actually studied at Harvard University because their way of living is their culture and how they build their economy is so close, you know, to the Hebrew culture, and it works for them. So what I'm saying is this: education that does not empower us to apply our knowledge. I mean, go and study MBA. They will teach you how to develop strategy. They will teach you planning, but there's no course on execution. No, there's no focus. Execution is mentioned in passing. We learn strategy, but we don't learn execution. And we don't have the culture of apprenticeship where we will be in a context and in a space where, you know, we implement what we have learned. Cultures that are successful do not learn from school. They learn from community. They learn from the dining table. You will meet a person, you will criticize them that they are managers, but they don't have metric. But they have learned from the dining table and they are productive, they have results. And us, with our certificates and qualifications, are good at communication, but very bad at implementation. So I would say it starts with our worldview. It starts with our worldview. We have to shift from the Greek worldview. I really believe that this worldview of democracy and this Greek culture has not really helped us, especially as Africans. Put an African leader on a debate, on a debating table. They will win the debate hands down. But one thing we cannot do, we cannot execute. We cannot execute, and that needs to change. That's why I'm pointing to a worldview. The conversation we had the other day, paradigms, they have to shift. We have studied business, but our businesses are failing. We have studied many things, but we can't build at all. God have mercy on us. That is my short answer.
Well, that's it. Obviously, the halftime is we're gonna have a second half. Definitely say we're definitely gonna have a second half, and yeah, I'm excited for that because there's much that we need to tap in. You've done a powerful intro, and it just triggered a lot. But yeah, we will make arrangements, and you'll definitely have to come back, and let's go deeper into execution and strategies on how to actually do that, and be real transformational, impactful leaders. Otherwise, what a night of wisdom, uh, fire, and vision. To you, sir, Reverend Sakhiwo Rala, thank you for pouring into us with such clarity, with truth, and conviction. Your leadership is a gift, and we are richer for having received from your well tonight. To everyone who showed up this evening, you didn't just attend a session, you leaned into transformation, and that is the mark of true leadership. But this is not the end, it's just one step in a much bigger journey. If you want to revisit tonight's powerful insights or share them with your team, please feel free to head over to our YouTube channel, Unfolding Capacity, subscribe, find past sessions, comment, like, and share them so that at least you get a notification as soon as it's uploaded. Every session we've done is achieved there. And trust me, you will want to revisit them. And here's your next step. Join us again this coming week for another dynamic and empowering session. This room keeps growing, and we want you to be part of that growth. Do you want reminders? Do you want Zoom links? Or do you want any update? Feel free to connect with me directly on LinkedIn. Just search Amazement Titus, or simply send me a WhatsApp message on 081 035 0664. 081 035 0664. And we'll make sure you're always in the loop. Let's continue to raise the standard. Let's continue to unfold capacity. Let us lead boldly, grow deeply, and think generationally. Until next time, please stay sharp, stay grounded, and keep leading beyond limits. I see as we close off that there's a question or something that Lead wants to share. If you still want to share, Lead, please go ahead. Lead, go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. And greatly appreciate